Hiring managers of Reddit. What's your favorite "they were perfect until we googled them" story? About 6 years ago, we were hiring a new attorney at my law firm. On the day of the interviews, one of our assistants started checking the prospective candidate's bar records. The state bar website provides each lawyer's disciplinary history, which is a pretty important bit of information to check, and I can't figure out why no one bothered checking them before they invited candidates to interview. It turns out that one of the guys coming that morning for an interview had a disciplinary record and had previously been suspended for possession use. My boss had his assistant call the guy and try and cancel the interview, but he had already left to come in. Apparently we had his home number and not a cell phone. My boss decided that he was obviously not going to hire this guy, so he had me conduct the interview instead. He didn't want to have him come all the way in and then tell him immediately that we wouldn't be hiring him. The sad thing is that the guy's resume was impeccable, and he genuinely knew our practice area. He really would have been a great addition to the firm, were it not for his inability to have kept his nose clean. I should clarify that it is not literally my law firm, but is instead the law firm at which I am employed. I do not make the hiring decisions. TLDR. Hired a psychopath arsonist who was in the middle of a crime spree. Oh man. Finally a thread I have a good story for. I run a sales team and one of my RVPs, Chuck, brought in a candidate that he was very enthusiastic about. Let's call her Karen. Chuck, in a previous role, went up against Karen in deals all the time and said that Karen always pulled the deal out from him, that she'd be a major asset. I met Karen, thought she was nice, but certainly didn't find her to be the typical quota killer. But Chuck was excited and I tried to give my RVPs a lot of rope, so I checked a few references and did income verification, which all checked out. Background check was fine too. Fast forward to Karen's first day, I immediately knew something was off. She was frantic, running around the office barefoot, wearing her glasses on the back of her head, dressed like someone out of Little House on the Prairie, essentially not acting at all like someone who had the potential to make $500K that year. On her second day, our VP of marketing walked into my office and asked me what I thought of Karen. I responded that I thought she seemed a little nutty, but was trying to give her a shot. He then asked me to Google her name and the town she lived in. The results, to this day, are still some of the best Google gold I've ever seen. Long story short, this woman was in the middle of a nasty divorce. Her husband was living with a family friend and she tried to burn down the family friend's house in retaliation for letting him stay there and had been arrested for attempted arson. This didn't pop on the background check as it happened a couple weeks prior to her starting. In addition to the arrest, the husband was granted a restraining order. This was enough grounds to terminate her, but it got better. 3 evenings prior to her first day with our company, she violated her restraining order and broke into her husband's car that she filled with ripped up photos of them and a number of decapitated stuffed animals and doused his car in gasoline. She was arrested again for this act and then placed on house arrest with a GPS monitor. It turns out that she removed the monitor to come to work, which yielded in yet another arrest, but that wasn't until after I terminated her employment. Was hiring a DJ for our wedding. Went to a wedding expo and entered a few free drawings. Won a 50% off coupon for a newer DJ company. Money was tight. Quick Google of the company checked out. Semi-decent website with what seemed like legit reviews. Decide to go with the company. A lot of vendors require half payment for booking and half upon completion, so we cut the check. A few weeks later the company makes the local news for double booking clients, taking money and not showing up, setting up at weddings but being completely trashed and rude and abusive. Call the owner. He attempts to assure me that it was his business partner who he has now cut ties with. Wants to reassure me that everything will be great, so he meets with us on a weekly basis and goes over every detail of the wedding and what music is being played when. He actually called me to come to a local bar every now and then before the wedding even. Gave him the chance on a very short leash and a newly redesigned contract that specifically stated he would reimburse and pay for emotional damages if he failed to show. Everything turned out great and it was one of the best nights of my life. I was hiring an ISP help desk agent. His CV was great and he interviewed really well, but I noticed a 3-year gap in his employment history. A quick Google turned up that he had just done 3 years in prison for making and distributing kiddie pee. He did not get the job. I use 2 surnames names, my legal name, and my father's old performing name. Googling my legal name gets basically nothing except my grandfather's obituary and some volunteer recognition stuff for some work I've done in the past. Unfortunately, my other name, which is attached to my email so I imagine employers Google it, comes up with the following statement: something mean about Notch being a little b. Edited to this instead of the exact phrase because it turned out I'd basically just exposed myself. Damn it, Google and your Skynet ways. I don't remember making this statement, ever. I'm not saying it isn't in character with who I was when I was younger, but goddamn, why is that something that Google calls up? It's not like I don't have plenty of other stuff, mostly volunteer related stuff, that Google could be selecting. But that phrase has haunted me for years now. It's like Google is trying to shame me. I just googled that exact phrase by putting it in quotes, and it came up with exactly one result. Google still cached it, though you deleted it. Girl told me she had a DUI from years ago. No biggie, we all make mistakes. Turns out she assaulted the arresting officer, so that little DUI turned out to include an assault and resisting arrest. Not a hiring story, but aunt works for a school. There was a tech guy that worked there. He was nice, fixed computers. Typical guy. She gets a message from the school that he has been fired, but he never had any direct contact with students, so there shouldn't be any needed action. The last bit was surprising, so she googled him. Turns out he was caught a state over fricking a farmer's cows while his friend videotaped. Resultantly, they didn't want him working near kids. Sort of tangentially related. Long story short, I was trying to convince someone I'd met that someone could Google them and find out they had worked for Amway and that it would look bad. To provide an example, I googled their name and found something worse. Long version. Met this guy in a college class who was a bit awkward but seemed like he had a good head on his shoulders. Nice enough, just weird. Worked at KFC while going to school and loved the place. Always talked about it and about how he wanted to go into marketing for them. Odd, but whatever. Couple years later, I'm in KFC and he's there, behind the counter. I ask him what's up and he starts telling me about how money was tight and he wasn't able to finish his college education yet. Conversation turns a bit and suddenly it goes from money is tight to yeah, I'm making a bunch right now with my own business. I make a mental note of that odd shift but act nice and he hands me an Amway business card. Oh no. Normally I would be offended if someone tried to drag me into their Amway business, but this guy was so, I don't know, simple isn't quite the right word, but simple that I felt bad for him. I had his email on the business card, which was a very juvenile email address to have on a business card, so I put together an email. I spent an hour or so informing him of what Amway was and how I knew he valued his employment at KFC, so he shouldn't be handing out business cards on the job. I kept phrasing and rephrasing things, trying to be nice about it, trying to be helpful without being pushy. I got to a part where I said something like, and what happens if, in the future, you're looking for a job and someone Googles your name or your email address? Them finding Amway may not look good on you. Then, to provide an example, I googled his name, Diddler Registry. I tried googling a software developer I was interviewing, but he had such a generic name I couldn't track him down. When he mentioned that a recent career break was to stand in a local government election, we found a semi-public Facebook feed full of xenophobic and anti-Semitic posts. These included photoshopped pictures of Angela Merkel in a Nazi uniform and posts encouraging people not to eat at foreign muck Indian takeaways. There were several local news articles highlighting his horrible xenophobic social media activity. He was also quoted as saying, "When I get elected and I'm in power, I'll show them." Worst of all was the news article containing his unsolicited abusive rant at the mother of kidnapped child Madeleine McCann. A software developer who doesn't like Indians. He is going to have an interesting career. Tangentially related. I rent out a couple of rooms in my house. On occasion I'll see people in local subreddits asking about finding a room for rent. Pro tip: if you're using your Reddit account to look for a room for rent, avoid keeping the following types of posts in your post history. Responding primarily to NSWP posts, especially if you're posting lots of creeper messages. I don't care if you're gay, but posting Reddit personals for daily random hookups as a power bottom doesn't make for a good roommate. My front door isn't revolving. If reading your post history feels like a guide on how to be in butthole, you should probably rethink your behavior. Really nice, clean-cut young man from the nearby college applies in my shop. Sweet, friendly, outgoing and smart. He was perfect. Until we googled him. He had a last name that was the same as a girl I had gone to school with. So I googled his name, found his Facebook and discovered that he was actually her little brother. I immediately called my friend, his sister, and said, "Hey, your brother just applied in my shop. I'm gonna hire him." She said, "Sweet, free ice cream." So he was perfect until I googled him, and then he was even better. He worked for me for 2 years and was a delight. Twist ending. The applicant's resume listed a bachelor's, master's, and doctorate degree. When googling the candidate, I found another version of his resume. This version listed a bachelor's degree, master's degree ABD, and PhD ABD. During his interview, I asked him point blank if he had successfully defended a master's and doctorate level dissertation, something I ordinarily would not ask. Sure enough, he never even attempted a master's dissertation and was unable to complete his doctoral dissertation. Did not hire. I'm not a hiring manager, but at my last job, this girl with a master's in education got hired for an entry-level grunt position. She was absolutely horrible. Constantly complained about other co-workers and started crap all the time. I was wondering why someone who taught special education would want to work in insurance. As it turns out, she was arrested for hooking up with a 17-year-old student shortly after she had gotten married. Her aunt and cousin are successful people at the same company. I'm assuming they got her the only job she could get that wasn't minimum wage. Frick you, Rochelle, you fricking creep. A couple of years ago, there was a story in the news about a Canadian ex-prisoner, but I am unable to find it now. To paraphrase from memory, this guy had been sentenced for organizing a drug ring. After his release, he was completely open on his CV about his past and his conviction, and pointed out how difficult and challenging it was to do all the drug trade organizing he had been doing, and all the skills that he needed to do that, and all the things he had learned from doing that job, and that he is therefore highly qualified to do any job involving organization management logistics. He was immediately hired. The story sparked a tiny bit of outrage in the media. Guy flew down to Houston for an internal interview, meaning a new position at the company he already works for. Interview goes very well. Afterwards he goes out to lunch on the company dime and then flies home. He submitted an expense report for this lunch, as well as his flights, rental car, etc. This is all very standard, until the interviewer, who is the one to approve said expense report, sees he listed Mary's Steakhouse. It is supposedly in the area, but she has never heard of this restaurant where her potential new employee racked up a $150 lunch tab. So she googles it. Mary's Steakhouse is apparently the name of a local strip club. The guy not only didn't get the job, he nearly lost his job, and obviously his company did not reimburse him for his lunch bill. He is also banned from traveling for the company for 2 years, and his boss must now scrutinize all his expense reports. TLDR, don't try to get your employer to pay for lap dances. Seemed like a nice young man, very polite, hardworking and quiet. Didn't find out until other employees complained that he had dodged a murder rap by reason of insanity and was recently deemed fit to rejoin society. Apparently the case was a pretty high profile one as well. His contract was not renewed. I work on Wall St. One woman we were interviewing showed up a solid 40 minutes late for the interview, toting a big huge jumbo sized soda and a bag of fast food, and admitted with a big smile that she was late because she had to have her fast food. You know how it is, she hadn't gotten lost. Her watch hadn't broken. Nope. She made it clear that she just took her time at Burger King. When my boss made it clear that she wasn't even going to be considered for the job at that point, she then panicked and blamed our receptionist, saying that it took her a full 40 minutes to sign her in. Now, that was a big fat lie, because 5 minutes before she showed up, I walked past reception on my way to the ladies' room, and she wasn't there. 5 minutes later on my way back from the ladies' room, there she was at reception signing in, again, a solid 40 minutes late. She was so late that my boss gave me the green light to show her to the elevator before he even saw her. But when she tried to get our receptionist in trouble in order to cover her own butt, he tore into her a bit before she headed out. Obligatory, not a hiring manager, but a few years ago I worked at a small machine shop, and I had put in my 2 weeks notice. President of the company is looking to find a replacement for me, and about a week before I depart I hear her laughing hysterically. She calls me over and shows me the Facebook page of someone she was going to call for an interview. His profile picture is his head wedged between a stripper's legs and vodka being poured into his mouth. Back in the day, some fellow employees and I vaguely recognized one of our new colleagues, but we couldn't quite put our finger on where we knew him from. We decided to Google him, and the first result, a news article detailing how our new co-worker was awaiting trial for putting fake cop lights on his car and threatening to arrest women if they didn't perform physical favors on him or give him cash on the spot. He was also accused of stealing tens of thousands of dollars worth of stuff from his old job. When asked about it, he gleefully bragged. Needless to say, he didn't last too long there after that. Well, sadly, this person made it past our defenses. I googled her and gave my manager the absolutely freaking not on her resume, but we hired her anyway. One night, I walked by her computer, left unlocked, and saw an advert for a prostitute on some escort website. Upon further inspection I realized she was the prostitute. Homegirl had a side job. So, imagine how awkward it was for me to go to my manager and start a conversation with, "Now Alan, I promise I wasn't looking up H." However, when I was a store security manager, I was gonna hire this guy who was 21 years old, had a ton of legal experience, judging by his answers, until his background check came back with like 8 or 9 petty larceny charges, a handful of drug charges, 2 DUIs, a domestic assault, and the kicker, not only had he been arrested for larceny from our store, a year before ISTS started, he assaulted the last security manager and threatened to respect kill his wife and kids. So, he didn't get a call back. I was a waiter at Olive Garden during my frick up years, and there was a guy, fake named Jeff, in the same suburb who was significantly more of a frick up. We met, had mutual acquaintances, didn't really know each other. Then one time I'm hanging out with other people and they're like, "Hey, did you hear that Jeff shot some dude in the balls?" What? Yeah, the dude's okay, but he's way harder than Jeff and is probably going to kill him. A few months later, he comes in and applies to be a waiter at the OG. My bosses are like, "Jeff says he knows you, Robert. What can you tell us about him? We're not super tight, but I know I wouldn't hire him." OG waiter training takes 2 weeks. Towards the end of it you're given a partial section and the trainer kind of watches over it to keep you from fricking up too bad. And most Olive Gardens are split, with dining areas on each side and the kitchen in the middle. You don't really have time to go back and forth. You can help people on your side but not people on the other. So Jeff is taking tables for the first time one night, and I'm on the other side of the restaurant with a larger than normal section. All of a sudden, he comes over to my side and he's like, "I got my first table. UHH. Robert, did you ever hear how I shot that guy in the balls once? That's my table. He can't know I work here." "I don't know, man. Can you tell the trainer?" "But she doesn't know about the balls thing. You gotta take this table for me." "I can't, man. I'm over here. I got my other tables." I have no clue how that resolved. I was busy till I went home. About 2 weeks later, I'm not working and I don't hear about this till the next day, but he works until 9 or so, then heads out. After the restaurant closes, OG doesn't let employees back in, or leave one at a time, for security reasons. About 30 minutes after close, Jeff and some other random guy start banging on the front door. "Hey, let us in." "It's just me, bro," and the other guy is like, "Yeah, let us in. We have a gun, we're gonna rob you." Jeff is upset and indicates this in 2 ways. "Hey man, don't tell them that." Now they're not going to open it, and punches Rondo in the face. Rondo is upset that Jeff punched him and punches Jeff back, but because they're both on ketamine or whatever they both fall down and now they're rolling around on the ground laughing and punching each other and bleeding out of their faces. The manager sent everyone to hide in the kitchen, called the cops. By the time the cops got there, Jeff and Rondo were gone. The next day Jeff no call no shows. The day after, Jeff shows up to work all revved up and ready to go and surprised that they're firing him. I wasn't a manager, but a tech supervisor, so I got to sit in on the interview. The guy getting interviewed was a friend of mine and my boss knew it, but we acted like I didn't tell him. When you Google my friend's name, what you get is a video of him getting in a fight at a car show. My boss found this hilarious. My boss was also the perfect straight man. The interview went swimmingly. My boss was very professional and to the point. Very little small talk. Towards the end he asked, so what would you say are some potential weaknesses? I mean, besides getting punched in the face, I've seen pudding thinner than the air in that room. My boss just stared at him, then very slowly lifted his phone and opened it to the video that was already on the screen. I think I broke first, but we all eventually went into a fit of laughter. Buddy got the job. Not a googling story, but my dad owned an insulation drywall company, and even as a kid I generally knew the employees. It wasn't a big company and most of them had been over our house. One employee, fairly new, had not been yet. When he did come by, I believe to pick up a check or something of that nature, our dog refused to let him take a step inside. Where stood up, growling, even tried to take a bite. Most gentle dog, and had only displayed that type of aggression with one other person, an old neighbor who was later arrested for battery. My dad trusted her instinct, looked into him a bit, and found out he was stealing money from the company. Needless to say, he was fired. Good dog. I absolutely trusts dogs' instincts. I'm not a hiring manager, but I had 3 job interviews with a company for a decently well-paid position. They said that the second interview was the final interview. It seems as though they waited to Google me until right before offering me a position, because after the second interview, I got a final phone call in which the hiring manager started the conversation by quoting my character in a movie that I was in. He laughed. I nervously chuckled. As it turns out, I'm a working actor that wanted a flexible day job. He then asked me if I'd jump ship if I booked a series regular on a TV show. I said yes. He laughed. I didn't. I ended up taking the job and got called by my characters' names for the first 6 months. I don't understand this at all. Years ago we didn't hire a guy because there was a local news story of a domestic violence incident with him listed as the perpetrator only a few nights before the interview. We later found out that it wasn't the same person and they weren't even related. We were hiring for a salesman. This guy came in for an interview and he was extremely charming, had excellent charisma and sold us so hard on himself it wasn't even funny. He told us 100 lies about the people he knew and the companies he has contacts with, and we believed every word of it. We googled him and he ended up being a serial con man. He gave us a fake name and lied about everything. He was in jail for many years over fraud and other stuff related to what he was trying to do to us. He was so big he had a documentary on YouTube about him and his notorious cons. He was such a good salesman. One of the 3 managers interviewing him was still wanting to hire him even after we found out the truth until we reasoned with him. These aren't direct answers to the question but very relevant. I have 2 incidents. Incident 1. Potential employee is being interviewed by the software company I work for and is asked about relevant interests, hobbies he has. Dude goes on to brag about a Juarez site he runs. Yes, it was that long ago. And how he's got a bunch of our latest games on said site. Interview was cut short and dude was obviously not hired. Incident 2. I worked with an East Indian. Relevant later. Dude we'll call Bob 10 plus years ago. After a couple of years he leaves for another job. Or so I thought. A couple of years ago I see that Bob has come back. Bob was a cool dude, so I was happy to see him, and as I'm chatting with one of my old managers, who also worked with me and Bob 10 years ago, and I mention how great it is that Bob is back. Manager doesn't know who I'm talking about until I refresh his memory. Manager's face goes stone cold. He tells me he has to go. Bob's been blacklisted. He can't be here. Turns out Bob reapplied after years using his East Indian name, which is how he got around being blacklisted. Manager obviously got him fired and removed from the premises ASAP, but wouldn't tell me what he did to get blacklisted. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.